Evening, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to us all. This is a very exciting time. We're going into, of course, to the summer solstice. Wherever we are in some parts of the world, we're going into the fall and to the winter. And we are so grateful to be here with Mynoo Maryel this very day, because we're actually going to be chatting about awesomeness. So what a perfect time to be going into this new season and chatting about the 7 traits, enabling our within to bring out, activate, enjoy, and rock our awesomeness. And so my name is Sunny Chase. I am in for Catherine tonight. She is working, well, she's actually at her event for her movie, so it's very exciting. And I'm here. I'm the host of Solutionary Sundays on ABC. And I met Mynoo Maryel when we were coming together for the Dignity Forum many years ago. Some of you guys may know about that. And we just clicked and hit it off and just have been great, great friends ever since. And I've read all of her bits and writings and her The Bee book, and had her on my show a few times. And we've just worked together on a few projects, and I respect the daylights out of her. And I am so excited that we're all here and we're going to be enjoying her so much tonight. And so I think we are most probably ready to roll and rock into our awesomeness.
Great, Sunny. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our session too. So I will get started. Okay, this is 103rd Pearl of Wisdom, Awesomeness. And we're going to look at the 7 traits that are enabled within us when we enter this vibe of awesomeness, and how how we can work with them, and what's the unique leverage that we can apply and utilize for ourselves. So Sunny, you will handle the back room now, the waiting room, and just admit people as they come on. Okay. Okay, so let's begin, first of all, by looking at awesomeness itself. What is awesomeness? Awesomeness, from a dictionary definition, is a quality of being extremely good. It's about excellence. And there's like an extremely amazing, impressive quality. That's what awesomeness is all comprising of. So the vibe of awesomeness naturally puts you in a space where quality of your presence becomes one that feels extremely good to anyone that's around you, and it feels extremely good to you. There is an excellence that becomes natural to you, and you start exuding this very amazingly good feeling. It's a very special and quite an impressive quality that people experience exuding through you. It's a natural magnet. So I was excited that awesomeness is actually a pearl of wisdom. A pearl of wisdom is one which, if you only focused on this one pearl, it actually can deliver a world that delivers to everyone, as Bucky Fuller would say. So let's look at what are these 7 traits that are activated. Trait is like a personality trait, where when you display a particular personality trait, it is whatever is on display is what becomes the magnet that you magnetize towards you. So let's look at the first personality trait that gets activated. The first personality trait is scrumptious. I like that word anyway, scrumptious, delightful. It is excellent. And particularly, it's used in the context of deliciousness. We use it in the context of food, or in the context of, experiencing that yumminess that I talk about. So scrumptious by itself, many of you've heard me talk about, experiencing that feeling within you of uninterrupted flow of yumminess. Scrumptiousness actually is that. It puts you in that uninterrupted flow of yumminess. So when you're looking at activating this particular trait, where you show up, wherever you show up, people just get into their flow, and flow starts to flow within them. And they experience this uninterrupted flow of yumminess. And they don't know what it is, but it just feels really quite yummy and scrumptious. So I thought, okay, let me really do a deep dive into this vibe of scrumptiousness as a personality trait. And what I saw for myself is, so what I first did was I thought, okay, here I am at this point in time. What areas of my life are not exactly as I would like them to be? What areas of my life I would say are somewhat problematic? And now, given once I uncovered those areas of my life, I sort of wrote them down. I thought, okay, I'm actually going to take on this personality trait of scrumptious, feeling delightful, excellent, and especially delicious. So I started doing the lay of the land, and I started with, okay, which, right now, at this point in time, what is going on in my life that actually fills me with delight? And there is always something or the other that is definitely going on that fills you with delight, even if it is just simply looking out into nature, or the fact that you have what it takes to be able to go out for a walk and enjoy that, whatever it may be. By acknowledging that which fills you with delight, every one thing you acknowledge, delight starts to multiply. Because remember, the tool of acknowledgement is a very powerful tool. Whatever it is that you acknowledge that you don't want to have in your life, it applies a weed killer equivalent at the root of that, and it's eradicated. Whatever it is that you acknowledge that you want more of, it multiplies and amplifies. So the delight stock take was a great one. I just had to come up with one or two things and put out the question, how much better can it get? And it starts to already show you more things that make you delighted. And the fact that you're actually engaging in this exercise is delightful enough. And sometimes, intellectually, let's say you feel pressured, something's occurred and you're feeling really pressured. Start looking at photos that you might have on your phone. I mean, how lucky are we that we don't have to go find our photo albums? We can actually look at it straight on our phones, most of us at least. And that in itself delights us. There's so much available online. I mean, many of you heard me say this. I just go for 24/7 webcam of the, St. Mark's Square in Venice, or the Grand Canal, or the Rialto Bridge, and it delights me. And then I can go from there. The idea here is to activate this trait and to get into that vibe of awesomeness. You are called to anchor your experience in reality. So you go into taking that stock take and really grounding it in reality. And then, of course, since scrumptious also relates to deliciousness, if nothing comes to mind, you can go into, well, what are the most yummy and delicious foods that I have ever enjoyed? Where was the most wonderful place that I enjoyed them in? The idea is to activate this vibe of awesomeness. You are grounding it in reality. This particular Pearl of Wisdom, usually when I have 7 ways or 7 traits in this case, I usually say go from start to finish. Here you can actually come in at any level. In any one trait you activate, awesomeness as a vibe becomes your reality. So it's truly an awesome Pearl of Wisdom. you'll find yourself vibing, experiencing, sharing, awesomeness just by engaging with any one of these. So you can imagine, as an exercise, if you just take the next 7 days and take each trait on each day, and just walk around embodying that particular trait, you can imagine what experience you're going to have. And really what I did was when I took on scrumptious and got into that vibe. I mean, I have these videos of my grandkids, so it doesn't really take that long for me to experience delight. And it starts to multiply. And I enter that realm of awesomeness, feeling extremely and amazingly good. And really, honoring my own worthiness, feeling quite impressed with where I'm at this point in time, simply by grounding everything that is scrumptious, that is going on right here, right now. Now, you can take it even further. You can actually transform anything that might have occurred in your life that still has a bit of a charge or still particularly stressful. You can literally teleport yourself in your imagination to that point where that occurred and observe that moment in time and look at what was still going on that was delightful. What is still going on that made you feel a sense of excellence, and what was available to you that invoked the deliciousness. And in looking at a situation that was filled with a charge and that was still hidden and would pop up from time to time, and applying the scrumptious lay of the land examination to it, you start experiencing a sense of awesomeness. You start experiencing a sense of awesomeness because you become available to, wow, how amazing it is that I can right now look at that same situation and not feel I want to push it away, but actually underneath all that has bothered me, there were all these delighted moments that were hidden. It's pretty amazing. So I took this on for myself. And I remember there was a particular point when I was very new to England, and I had moved from Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank to take up a job in a local council in their information and technology department. And I was a very senior officer there in that department, but I was Indian. Everybody else did not look like me. And most of them were from England. The head of that particular department was American. And he saw that this particular council needed a very different computer system to be able to cope with this huge governmental change, legislative change that was going to hit every council in the next 2 years. So he went for a different type of computers with IBM, which is a different supplier to the one that the council had. So there were union protests, all sorts of stuff. So lo and behold, who gets to be the leader of this new project? He realized there are all these protests by people who are members of this union and active members of the union, who were going to interrupt and interfere, and the legislation was going to be implemented within 2 years. So not only did the hardware, as they called it, the computers themselves, had to be replaced across the council, there was also a need for a whole computer system to be developed and implemented. And there were union issues, like there used to be for a typing pool, and the women in the typing pool did typing. The computer engineers did computing stuff. But actually, the computers were going to be different. So instead of typewriters, you were actually going to use keyboards to enter data straight into the computer. And there were union protests about that you're actually trying to take the jobs of the typists away. And he could not communicate to them that your typing skills are the skills we want. We're not taking your jobs away. We're actually upgrading you and training you to have more sustainable opportunities in the workplace. He was not able to get that across. So and it was a very, very, very stressful time that we were going through. So lo and behold, I get to be the project leader of this project. I was at that point an IT propeller head. I could go in and I could really lead a team of other propeller heads, and we would together go ahead and create this computer system. But here I'm dealing with people from a different culture. I have to really, slow down my own listening and also slow down how I speak, because, they would say, well, we don't really understand what you're saying. You're speaking too fast. I didn't think I was speaking too fast, but whatever. There were cultural differences that were there. It was a very stressful time in my life. It was one that somehow we did get across the finish line. There was lots of, gore and blood around, not because I did anything as such. It's just that to implement this legislation at the pace and the drive with which we were doing it, it needed lots of things that were routine needed to be canceled off without due consideration for empathetically bringing people along. And it was done. So my memory of that time was one of great stress. I also became pregnant just 4 months before the legislation was going to kick in, and the computer systems were playing up, and we had the union screaming on one side, and my own team, because of their obligation and care for being a union member, had to join in certain strikes. So I had to get teams of Australian and New Zealand and programmers from New Zealand as temporary contractors to be a part of my team, which actually created even more fuel for the unions. It was quite a crazy time. So there I am doing this scrumptious lens. And with the scrumptious lens, I thought, I'm going to look at that time, because that was a time I was in the public eye, literally pushed into the public eye, because I would much rather have worked in the background. And really what happened was, as I got pregnant, I think the stress was so much, and I was working in the computer rooms pretty much 8-9 hours a day, that, I had a miscarriage. It could be whatever the reason may be, but my association with that and the sadness that occurred from that, that miscarriage experience is all associated with that time, So even though I never thought about it again, but when I did the scrumptious piece, I thought, okay, I'm going to really test it. I'm going to push the limit on here and go to that time. That was one of the most stressful times in the workplace for me, and look at what was delightful in that time. What was connecting me to excellence, and what felt delicious. Now, the delicious part was not difficult because of the pregnancy. It was in the early stages of my pregnancy, but I developed this crazy craving for escargot. I'd never eaten it before. I've never eaten them since. There was this Spanish place that we used to go to, and I was like, oh my God, the most yummy food ever was escargot. Digging that delicate fork in and pulling it out and filled with garlic butter. And okay. But it did get me to appreciate the excellence of the shells in which the escargot would be delivered. And clearly this creature may not belong to that shell, but it does actually create this wonderful shell around you, and then, I thought, amazing, how amazing it is. And then this Fibonacci sequence is actually so visible in that shell of a snail's shell. So I was like, started to think about all of those things. And I remember every time I would go and this thing would be delivered, the dish would be delivered on my plate, I would always admire the shell. And now I'm like starting to get into the little bit of that vibe of scrumptiousness, not yet awesome, still dreading to go into all the mayhems that I was dealing with. And I thought, no, there has to be something excellent. I kept going into work. I didn't shy away. And really what I realized was that there was such camaraderie. The team spirit was, I've never experienced this level of team spirit. And I felt that I don't believe anything else could have occurred in my life that would have made me feel that I am so supported by all of these people coming from a completely different culture, and really recognized and acknowledged as their leader. So in my team were people from Scotland, Wales, Britain, France, Australians, New Zealanders, Africa, China, Iran. It was at that time that I realized that I have to allow the British people from my team who'd been a part of the council for an extended period of their life to go and be with the unions, because that was their safety net. They were not being unkind to me. It was something that they felt they needed to do. And that in itself made me realize how honorable they were. So for me to actually deliver this project on time, I started looking for where am I going to find excellent project leaders that have that proven experience. And that was the first time that I looked at the refugee community and realized that there were many refugees that had come in from Iran who held senior positions in technology in their country. And they were in the refugee center shelters without a job. So I decided to go into the refugee shelters in Southall, where there were a number of Iranians that were present and shared what our project was. And I got the most amazing project leader from there. He was far more experienced than I was. And, in those early days of pregnancy, I was, my head was, hormones were kicking in and I had all the morning sickness that was there. He was there, rock solid. And he was so delighted. I received so many blessings from him, his family, and the Iranian community in itself. I was like heralded as a hero. And all I'd done was, I had a very definite need, and I needed someone who had that experience and expertise and had the gravitas within IBM Global for IBM engineers in the UK to take me seriously. And that happened. It really like, my God, I was harnessing excellence. And wasn't that excellent about me itself to come up with an idea like that? So the unions, it literally took to prick the balloon, if you like, of the unions blaming me for bringing in these Australian and New Zealand contractors, proving the point that what I was doing was going to take the jobs away. When I went into the refugee camp and took somebody somebody from there on at a very senior position. So then that argument was out. And they had to come up with something else until the British people who were a part of my team, who were supporting the unions in their representations, started explaining to the union leaders how what we were doing was actually enriching the talent and the skills capabilities of the typing pool. And they had the time, because they were not engrossed in this computer system, but actually demonstrating with the unions to actually take many of these typists who were also part of the union demonstrations and train them. And then the typists themselves started saying, wow, this is so much easier than typing. So it was like, my God, well, how delightful is that? But I never noticed it. Never noticed it until I did this exercise. So when you are going through this pearl of wisdom, right, absolutely activated with something that is going on right here, do the scrumptious straight examination with something going on right here, and then go into choose one of the toughest situations in your life and look at it with the scrumptious lens, really embodying the scrumptious trait, and all of these amazing things get revealed to you. It was completely an awesome experience. I also got to see how I evolved as a leader. I talk about the difference between good leaders and inspired leaders is inspired leaders know that they have only one job to do, which is to create other leaders who can take failure and not give a damn. And I became an inspired leader as a result of that project. I also saw energetically that particular pregnancy and all of that was very much formative of time and enabled me to become a leader who actually takes a full spectrum perspective into account. It is in that project that I learned that really the game I'm to play is all days work, all days play. And this whole idea of, separating home and work, whilst I may think it's an honorable thing to do, it actually crushes you. But if you just simply accept, you do take your work home and you do bring your home to work and you learn to harmonize it, you actually experience fulfillment. That occurred when I did this scrumptious analysis looking back at that moment in time. And the fact that I wasn't afraid to go and examine that moment in time, warts and all, ups and downs, all of it. That in itself made me feel scrumptious. Awesomeness was anchored. And now in this scrumptious state, I looked at everything that I had written that were problems or that were not the way I wanted them to be at that particular point in time, in my life right now, just turned over. They were all sorted. They weren't problems or concerns anymore. Awesomeness was anchored unequivocally. Awesomeness realized. So it's an amazing, an amazing, amazing experience going through these traits. The second trait, oh my gosh, we've spent half an hour on this one, but it's a really yummy one, scrumptious. So let's look at the next one. The next one is magnanimous. Magnanimous. The magnanimity of the word magnanimous in itself makes my heart sick. So what's magnanimous? Dictionary definition says it's kind, generous, forgiving, something like a noble and courageous spirit. Now, when I look back, this act of mine where I chose to recognize that the British people that were in my team, who had been in the council for many years, the honorable thing for them to do would be to go with the unions. That was a kind thing to do. On a project where we were like the showcase for IBM. So they were talking about it. We were like spotlighted at the highest level within IBM because it was a huge project, a few hundred million pound project that was being rolled out, all right from changing the computer hardware to this huge, completely new software. We were also in the political limelight because there were the two parties, the Tories and the Labour Party, and the Tories had come in on account of this legislative change, and the local Tories were were very encouraged at the progress that we were making. So they were very excited to demonstrate how successful they are to the center. So there was tremendous political interest. And as a result, the unions took advantage of all of this high-level profiling of this case to get their case across. So it was like really quite larger than life. It called for tremendous courage on my part. You know, at that point, I was 29, 28, 29, you know. So when I did the magnanimous lay of the land, I saw, yes, there was a courageousness in my spirit. And I was absolutely connected to my spirit throughout that project. It was a 2-year project. Throughout the evolvement of that project, I was connected to my spirit. And the fact that I was quite new into the country at the time meant that I didn't have any distractions. You know, I didn't have any friends or anything as such. I made some lasting friendships as a result of this project. But at that time, I was still quite new. I didn't necessarily have friendships as such. So I was totally not distracted. And I was respectful. So this whole piece about showing noble and courageous spirit was often talked about, you know, on account of how I was leading this particular project. Many of us were chosen to do a management MBA by the organization, and I was one of those. And there were various other people from different departments. And that was phenomenal, you know, that I got chosen on account of this project to do this. And it was fully financed and sponsored by the organization, including giving me the time out to do it. Now, what I didn't realize was there were 5 others that were chosen, and they were all very senior people from the entire organization. All of them had known about this project, you know, and had known about me as a leader of this project. And they had their own descriptions of the kind of person they thought I was. And it was amazing to listen to. I had no idea that there were newsletters and some internal circulars that would do the rounds about my leadership. I had no idea about that. And people actually analyzing and studying my leadership. I mean, I became a case study for the MBA course that we were all doing. And it wasn't just it wasn't just the 5 of us. There were, you know, at least 120 other leaders, C-suite leaders from different parts of Europe that were part of this, with me being a case study of that. That was magnanimity acknowledged without even my knowledge. But when I look back, I was being magnanimous. You know, there was that magnanimous personality trait was being displayed, unbeknown to me. And it stemmed from that kind, generous act of allowing the British members of the team without excluding them from the team. I didn't say that you couldn't speak to anybody in the team. My American boss at the time was like, you've got to protect yourself and make sure that the work that you're doing doesn't get, is not revealed to those members of the IT team who are a part of the union. I didn't do anything like that. There was no need, because I knew they were actually on our side. They wanted this to be successful, because the legislation wasn't a local legislation, it was a national one. So the way you can work with this is, you know, when you go and look at a difficult time in your life and you start applying these personality trait evaluation of what was going on, then you will literally find so much to learn as you go through each of the personality traits. So I didn't necessarily need to go into another incident at all, because there was so much magnanimity that I uncovered. And really what that did was it made me own the magnanimous personality trait. as something that was there in me, that I could tap into and turn it on whenever I wanted. And I could apply magnanimous personality trait to any situation. And some of you know from when I shared about my daughter-in-law and her residency visa issue that had a lot of complications that we were going through because there was just an erroneous visa that she had taken to come to Dubai last year. This is something that we were going through. And I know for a fact I was able to get to the highest level within the immigration authorities just because of this particular personality trait, magnanimous. I was being kind to some of the errors that computer system was not able to fix. And as a result, she was not able to switch from the visa she had to having a resident visa. It was an error on the computer. They were having lots of political issues internally. How many people, I've brought it to the surface because I've taken my daughter-in-law's case to the highest level, but how many other people are affected by this? But that was theirs. I honored wherever they were at. I was actually being quite generous and giving them the time it took to rectify the computer errors. And I was very forgiving. It was this magnanimous trait. And as a result, every step of the way, wherever I went to address it, and I had to go to various offices and various officials. And also, I hadn't realized how many local Emiratis actually listened to my work. I needed some local Emiratis to be able to talk on my behalf to get past certain levels of hierarchy. So I just literally put it out there in some of my WhatsApp groups and other groups that I have, and some just local group interest groups in the UAE. And then they were like, oh my God, of course we'll be there. You helped me in this way. And this particular piece helped me in this way. I mean, it was like, wow, amazing. Amazing people stepped up. People I didn't even know. And I was being magnanimous, generous and kind, and they were being magnanimous, generous and kind. And it was like a wonderful exchange of how appreciative and gracious we were about having each other in our lives. Some very special friendships have emerged from there. Very special support network has emerged from there, which gave me the freedom to, move my work base from Dubai to India after my son and daughter-in-law and the 2 grandkids moved in. I discovered the most amazing, I would say the best sound healer ever in the world as a result of this particular situation, but it is to do with the magnanimous personality trait. So it's awesomeness. The great thing about awesomeness is it is self-regenerative. You just have to get into that vibe and it regenerates itself again and again and again. The third one is gracious personality trait. Graciousness, again, the hallmark of graciousness is kindness and courtesy. And there's a charm about it. There's a good taste, generosity of spirit that comes forth when you are in the space of being gracious. And as a result, there's a leisure, you experience a tasteful leisure of wealth and living, and as a result, abundance starts to flow. Graciousness as a personality trait has all of this going for it. Now, by the time you get to gracious, just like I did in my case, I could see that, navigating my way through the union demonstrators outside the town hall, took some effort. And initially it was a battleground. But as time went on, and as the word started spreading by the same women who were a part of the typing pool, that, hey, actually, we become far more employable and we have many more choices and options. I would eat people, the demonstrators would part, and nod with smiles. They didn't clap or anything like that, but they certainly nodded with smiles. I felt very welcome, and I think this kindness and courtesy was the one that really guided me and helped me there. And okay, I mean, they said I had a characteristic charm, but really what my team members talked about was generosity of spirit. And the generosity of spirit, again, is an infectious vibe. One person displays generosity of spirit. Humans really love being love, which is who they are. Anything outside of that is a conflict to the innate vibe of being human. So even if you're in the middle of a battleground, which felt like a battleground there, with initially the demonstrators screaming slogans in your face. And in those days, they never had underground car parks there. They had overground tiered car parks, which was a nightmare because you were coming down all these floors with demonstrators or being trapped in an elevator with demonstrators. That was the worst thing. So I would park my car somewhere far away and walk that last stretch to avoid that concentrated barraging of slogans in my face. But I just kept going, and then it was that moment where I said to my English team, you go, you honor your unions. They've taken care of you all these years. Go, do what you have to do. Don't feel pulled or conflicted. You're always a part of this team. That was the generosity of spirit. And that just started multiplying. The next where it multiplied was when this new project leader from Iran joined my team. That was like it was like a leapfrog moment. And everyone felt gracious and proud being a part of this project. Initially, people were embarrassed. They didn't want their names on the project team. We were like the show and tell, the hunted ones. And then we became the heralded ones. And I'm very, very certain I didn't know the 7 traits that get enabled by awesomeness. But doing this exercise as I prepared for our session today, I could see how each one was actually anchoring us in this vibe of awesomeness. There were so many moving parts, human and technology-wise, that simply got harmonized as if by magic, and it wasn't magic. We were actually working it. We stayed in our flow no matter what. For days on end, we would just simply sleep on the floor of the computer room. Because going out and coming back, because when you were navigating through that battleground, it took a while, it took an hour or two to really get back into the rhythm of work. So it was amazing to see how gracious personality trait, literally like a domino, started knocking off all of the impediments that were coming in the way. Do this lay of the land for yourself, and awesomeness will be your reality in any situation. You will know that the awesomeness vibe, it's as if it reawakens the awesomeness vibe within you. The 4th trait that is enabled by awesomeness is wholesome. Wholesome originates from an old English word meaning healthy. So this personality trait of wholesome is healthy. It really invigorates health. It activates, invokes a cellular memory of health and well-being within you. Wholesomeness is often characterized by physical or moral well-being. So whilst the stress was immense in this project that I've described, immense, pressures were high profile, highly visible, and they were adding to that immense level of stress. And there were many moral dilemmas that were being surfaced and talked about and written about in the press. You know, and yes, okay, I had the miscarriage also. So physically, I was definitely challenged by that whole experience. And it's so easy to get stuck up on that one aspect of physical health damage. Stress is there. God knows what that mental stress has done to other parts of my body. And then when you go into the wholesomeness and you look at where was I actually being enriched and becoming even healthier, where my wellness was being nurtured and nourished at the same time. You know, physically, it was not. But mentally, whilst the stress was there, seeing the impact it was having on the members of the team, and seeing the impact the team spiritedness was having on all of us, like we were standing in this together. And then when we saw our adversaries, the union leaders, turn around and come on our side, the emotions that generated in us wasn't one of victory as such. It was really one of rejoicing and in our co-created success. There was a wholesomeness to that celebration that was there. And just by embodying, so what I saw that, okay, I see all of that. That was certainly occurring. And by embodying wholesomeness as a personality trait within you, you immediately acknowledge that vast majority of your 124 trillion cells that I've been talking about are actually wholesome. They are completely well. You know, and you start owning the vibrancy in your own vitality. Awesomeness is delivered. And it's so wonderful. It's like a cyclical, a circular pearl of wisdom. You know, awesomeness invokes these personality trait. You embrace this personality trait, and awesomeness becomes anchored. You know, so you can start from any direction. I choose the vibe of awesomeness. Let me now embody wholesomeness, wholesome as a personality trait. And then you suddenly, it's as if your view becomes holistic about any situation. You land in this very special presence of your presence, which feels harmonious in any situation. You develop an inner strength to be able to deal with those things that are obstacles and communicate them in a state of harmony. Wholesome does that. So wholesome delivers awesomeness. Awesomeness invokes wholesome as a personality trait. The fifth one is enthusiastic. Enthusiasm in itself is being very interested in something. And you're so interested that you take the time to learn about it. In the story that I talk about, I became very interested in these different cultures. Rather than being judgmental based on some preconceived notion I may have had about the English or the Welsh or the Scottish, they had all of that going on. I actually became very enthusiastic, very interested in learning about these different cultures, the nuances. And then when I had this particular project and things started going pear-shaped, and I chose to go find people from other cultures who had the expertise, I learned about them and realized actually there's a lot of sameness in all of us. And the fact that we are different makes for a wonderful, very lively bunch of people. Looking back, we were all anchored and stationed in our own unique expression of love as our innate vibration. And that in itself got me even more enthusiastic about going deep down into one of the most difficult times of my life and uncovered all of these awesomenesses that were there. So enthusiastic as a trait, as a personality trait, is activated by choosing the vibe of awesomeness. And you can apply that to any situation where you get interested and spend time in learning about it. And when you spend the time in learning about it, you are very present, you're very engaged. You also become a particularly great listener. And therefore, people feel received. People feel they belong. That's what happened with me. This 28, 29-year-old, working with a team, as a leader of a team where everyone was older than me, 100%. Everyone was far more experienced than me in the industry that I was a leader of. I had some qualifications, and experience of the computer technology that was being implemented. But in terms of leadership and other stuff, I was really new. But they saw I was enthusiastic and I wanted to learn. And I would ask questions as opposed to proclaim judgments. So, whilst initially there was proclamation of judgments on my account by others, they stopped doing that. They actually liked teaching me. So it was a very, and I became super enthusiastic at looking at all the different perspectives, even as I was just doing a benefit of hindsight examination. It's a great pearl of wisdom for you to work with. So I have to keep track of time. So the sixth one is outstanding. Outstanding personality trait gets activated when you take on the vibe of awesome. Outstanding is prominent, distinguished. There's an air of superiority or distinction that is there, that is recognized. If you just look at the case, the story that I shared about that time of rolling out a computer system in the face of all these union demonstrations and political spotlight, as well as a marketing spotlight from IBM's point of view, it brought forth the outstanding trait in all of us that were a part of this particular team. We were prominent, didn't necessarily feel distinguished for a lot of the time, and yet towards the end, we felt that experience of having delivered excellence opened our mind to infinite possibilities that has continued to serve each of us as we move forward in our lives. If we could do it then, we can do it anytime. The strive for distinction, the strive for delivering something to the highest quality and standard came from there. The understanding of the nuances that are mine to do as opposed to everything also came from there. It was truly an outstanding experience. even if you don't necessarily find this, if you just for the heck of it, say, okay, today I'm actually going to simply embody the outstanding trait because I choose to experience the vibe of awesome. Don't need to worry about anything. You just make that declaration and see how your day unfolds and start acknowledging, what's been outstanding in the last part of the last hour. Take a 30-second stock take. You could do it every hour, every 2 hours, after every meal or a drink that you have, what was outstanding? Again, this also is something that regenerates, and awesomeness multiplies and amplifies. And you can imagine when you're being awesome, then you're multiplying awesome. Others who come into your contact start to feel awesome themselves. The 7th trait that is activated within you in the vibe of awesomeness is nurturing. You care. Nurture is something, a way in which you operate, so which demonstrates care, and you help it to grow, whatever it is that you are nurturing, nature or person. And when you adopt a nurturing approach, even in a friendship that might have gone wrong, you actually are able to become close again, because that care and help to grow applies to yourself as well as to the other person. Nurture is a trait that can turn around any situation. And when, examining what occurred, just that act of allowing the British members of my team to go perform what felt honorable to them by joining the unions was the most nurturing act that I could have initiated in that team. It was foundational in anchoring the team spirit. And it literally multiplied from there. It opened me up to innovative ways because, half of my team was gone. So I had to really look at different ways in which I could populate that team with the expertise and experience that was needed to deliver. And I initially left a field to Australians and New Zealanders, and then to the refugee safe houses to find the team. That was nurturing at another level altogether. Awesomeness was anchored. Over to you, Sunny.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you, guys. This was absolutely amazing, Mynoo. Again, as usual, many notes. And guys, awesomeness. One of the things I love so much, and we just have a few seconds, but scrumptious, magnanimous, graciousness, wholesome, enthusiasm, outstanding, nurturing. Oh my gosh, Mynoo, the idea of taking each one of these and really embodying it, allowing it, just getting yummy with it every single day for the next week. I mean, guys, let's do that. I love that you said that it's regenerative. I love that you said that it opens us up. I love it about it being a declaration. I think that is absolutely scrumptious, scrumptious. And so all of our dear friends in Mynoo land out there and everywhere around the world, we are so grateful that you were here with us today. And it is our time to say goodbye. And until next time, please be well. Let's rock these 7, shall we, of awesomeness, and be awesome and allow all that loveliness around us. And again, until next time, I'm Sunny, and Mynoo is so grateful that you were with us all today. Bye-bye for now.